I had just left the wild countryside of Ireland and moved to London. Now, I had grown up watching black and white movies, but this picture was in Technicolor.
How did you deal with loss?
Faith. You know, I'm Irish, I'm Catholic. The church has been a big part of my life.
Pierce Brosnan just made an announcement that nobody saw coming. At 71, the former James Bond is preparing for the worst. His first wife died of ovarian cancer at 43. Then his daughter died of the same disease at 41. Now something has happened that's forcing him to face his deepest fear. The man who played the world's toughest spy is dealing with a battle he cannot win. And what he is planning to do next has everyone worried. Pierce Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953, in Drogheda, Ireland. He did not come into the world with much. No wealth, no family legacy, and as it turned out, no father. His dad, a carpenter named Thomas, disappeared so early in Pierce's life that he could not remember his face, voice, or even his presence. It was like he had vanished into thin air. His mother May was left to carry the weight. She worked as a nurse, holding together a life that had already begun to fall apart. But in 1957, she made a painful choice. She left for London to find work, leaving 4-year-old Pierce behind in Ireland. She had no other option. Still, that decision created another hole in Pierce's young world. What was meant to be a short separation turned into 7 long years. During that time, he was passed around between relatives. First with his grandparents in Navan, then an uncle and aunt in Trim. Each new house came with new rules, new schools, and unfamiliar faces. Pierce never stayed long enough to belong. He learned to keep quiet, to observe, to survive. He was always the new kid, always the outsider. Teachers noticed something in him. He was bright but withdrawn, always looking out the window, never quite present. Then everything changed in 1964. At age 11, he moved to Green, Scotland. His mother had remarried. Her new husband, William Carmichael, worked in a factory. He was kind and patient. But for a boy who had grown up without consistency, this new home brought mixed emotions. Pierce felt torn. He was happy to see his mother again but angry too. And now she had someone else, a new man in her life, a man who was not his father. Still, William tried. He taught Pierce small things, fishing, fixing things, how to trust again. He never pushed too hard. He never tried to replace anyone. One day, William took Pierce to the cinema. It was 1964, and the movie was Goldfinger. Sean Connery as James Bond lit up the screen. That night changed everything. Bond was not just a character to Pierce. He was the opposite of everything Pierce had felt. Bond was strong. Bond was confident. Bond was in control. And Pierce wanted to be just like that. By age 16, Pierce made another bold move. He dropped out of school in London and enrolled in St. Martin's School of Art. He did not have money or a clear plan, just a passion for painting. He loved the work of Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud. Back then, acting was not even on his mind. His focus was illustration and design. He survived on toast and tea while his classmates came from wealthier homes. He was determined to prove he belonged. But fate had other plans. In 1971, while still studying art, Pierce stumbled into a theater workshop in South London. He saw a fire eater practicing his act. Instead of walking away, Pierce asked if he could try. That one spontaneous moment rewrote his future. The group noticed something in him, a mix of bravery and natural presence. They invited him to join. He had never acted before, but now everything started to click. Just like Bond, he had entered a world of risk and charm. Soon after, Pierce joined the Drama Centre London. For 3 years, from 1973 to 1976, he trained harder than ever before. The school was intense. More than 60% of students dropped out. The teachers were tough. They broke students down to rebuild them. Some quit. Some had breakdowns. But Pierce pushed through. He worked side jobs. He studied Shakespeare. He even trained in mime and circus acts. It cost £1,200 a year, a fortune back then. But Pierce never gave up. In 1976, he got his first real break, a stage play called Wait Until Dark. It was a thriller, and Pierce played a character that made people uncomfortable. The director saw something cold in him, something unsettling. That edge worked. A year later, he took on a bold role in a difficult Tennessee Williams play, The Red Devil Battery Sign. The play had flopped in America, but Pierce brought it to life in London. Critics praised his performance. Suddenly, people were noticing. He moved to film next. In 1980, he had a blink-and-you-miss-it role in The Mirror cracked alongside Elizabeth Taylor. He was on screen for less than 30 seconds. He earned just £50, but it was a start. That same year, he appeared in The Long Good Friday with Helen Mirren and Bob Hoskins. He played a minor IRA character. The movie was not a hit right away, but over time it became a cult classic. And there Pierce was, quietly building his path to stardom. In 1982, Pierce Brosnan was barely known outside of the UK. He had done some British TV and theatre work but nothing major. Then something unexpected happened. He auditioned for a small role on a new show called Remington Steele. Not as the lead, but as a murder victim. That could have been it, one scene and done. But NBC's casting director saw something in him. They saw charm, screen presence, something magnetic. So they called him back, not for a minor part but for the lead role. That decision changed everything. The original plan for Remington Steele was a seasoned American con man in his 50s. Brosnan was 29, young, Irish, and unknown in the United States. Still, the producers took a gamble. Over 200 actors auditioned, many of them well-known Americans. Brosnan got the role. His Irish accent almost cost him the part. Executives feared American viewers would not accept a foreign lead. But once he stepped into the role, he was Remington Steele. Cool, smooth, mysterious, and audiences loved him for it. The show premiered on October 1, 1982. Right out of the gate, it was a hit. NBC's second highest-rated new series. In its first year alone, 15.6 million people tuned in each week. But it was not a smooth ride. The show was actually cancelled after its fourth season in 1986. Fans were furious. The studio changed its mind. It came back for one last run. The final episode aired in February 1987 and drew nearly 26 million viewers. That is the kind of send-off most shows only dream of. At its peak, Remington Steele was making NBC over $50 million a year just from advertising. International sales added another $200 million. The show aired in more than 80 countries. And something strange happened in America. Between 1983 and 1987, applications for private detective licenses jumped by 340%. Brosnan's cool, clever character had clearly struck a nerve. But success came with a price. Only 2 months after the show started airing, critics were already saying Brosnan should be the next James Bond. In January 1983, Entertainment Weekly called him the most Bond-like actor since Sean Connery. Just a few months later, Bond producer Albert Cubby Broccoli reached out. He was watching and he was interested. By 1984, the speculation exploded. NBC leaned into it. Their marketing hinted at Brosnan's secret agent vibe. TV Guide ran a cover with him asking if he was the next 007. Even Ian Fleming's widow and Fleming publicly said that Brosnan looked and acted exactly like what her husband had envisioned for Bond. At the same time, Brosnan was getting serious critical recognition. That same year he was nominated for a Golden Globe for his role in Nancy Astor. It was only his second major TV role. He was up against legends Anthony Hopkins and John Gielgud. Still, Brosnan nearly won. Industry insiders said he lost by just 3 votes. His performance impressed even the real Astor family, who had originally opposed the series. His Bond journey though was not going to be simple. Most people think he was first offered Bond in 1985. Not true. He was actually considered for the role in 1983. For A View to a Kill, Roger Moore was unsure about doing another film, and Brosnan was on deck. He had met Broccoli on the set of For Your Eyes Only, where Brosnan's wife Cassandra Harris had a small role. Broccoli took one look at him and said, "If he can act, he is my guy." But the studio panicked. They offered Moore a huge payday, over $3.5 million, to return. So Brosnan's shot was delayed again. Then in 1986 something even worse happened. Remington Steele had been cancelled. But when word got out that Brosnan might be the next Bond, the show's ratings surged. NBC saw a chance. They reversed the cancellation and ordered a short 5th season. Brosnan was still under contract. That meant he could not film Bond. It was brutal. The attention he got from being linked to Bond was used against him. He was stuck. And while he finished the final season of Remington Steele, Bond producers moved on. Timothy Dalton got the role. That moment changed everything for Brosnan and for Bond. Dalton was Brosnan's friend. Losing the role hurt, but he had to smile through it. Dalton's version of Bond was darker, grittier. It did not go well. License to Kill flopped in the United States, making just $34 million. Brosnan watched from the sidelines. He knew he could have brought something different. Between 1986 and 1994, what fans call the lost years, Brosnan did not disappear. He made smart choices. In The Fourth Protocol, 1987, he played a British spy in a Cold War thriller. It was not Bond, but it was close. He starred in Nomads, 1986, showing his range in a supernatural role. He even did Diet Coke commercials where he played a smooth tuxedoed hero. A not-so-subtle nod to Bond. Pierce Brosnan met Cassandra Harris in the late 1970s. She was already a working actress, born Sandra Colleen Waits in Sydney in 1948. When they met, the spark was instant. Pierce did not plan on falling in love. He just thought she was beautiful. But something happened. Soon they were living together in Wimbledon. On December 27, 1980, they got married. Cassandra had just gone through a rough divorce, so this new chapter meant everything to her. She had 2 kids from that marriage, Charlotte and Christopher. Pierce did not hesitate. He stepped into their lives like he had always belonged. When Cassandra's ex-husband Dermot Harris died of a heart attack in 1986, Pierce legally adopted the children. They took his name. But it was more than paperwork. Pierce did not grow up with a father himself, so he poured everything into being the dad he never had. He once said he was not a father, he was just Pierce, and then he became daddy. In 1983, Cassandra and Pierce had a son together. They named him Sean. That made them 5. Life felt full and warm. The kids got along and Pierce's career was picking up, but family came first. He wanted to give them the kind of love he never got growing up. He made sure they felt safe, happy, and seen. Something magical happened in 1981. Cassandra was cast in the Bond film For Your Eyes Only. She played a Bond girl before Pierce even dreamed of being 007. But while she was filming, Pierce met the Bond producer Albert Broccoli. Cassandra believed in him. She pushed him to go for the role. Broccoli was impressed and considered Pierce as the next Bond. But Pierce was stuck in a contract with Remington Steele. He could not take the role. Not yet. Cassandra wanted it for him so badly. But she never got to see it happen. In 1987, everything changed. While Pierce was filming The Deceivers in India, Cassandra started feeling really sick. They flew back to London. The news was terrible. She had ovarian cancer. Not just a small lump or something easy to treat. It was everywhere. The diagnosis hit like a truck. Pierce said from day one we had a fight on our hands. What followed were 4 brutal years. Cassandra went through 8 surgeries. She had a year and a half of chemotherapy. Her hair fell out. Her body weakened but she stayed strong. She questioned every treatment. She made her own decisions. She faced it all with courage. Pierce stood by her the whole time. He called himself the quiet party, always present but often helpless. Their son Sean, just a little boy, would sometimes pretend to be the doctor. It was heartbreaking. Cassandra's mother had died of the same cancer. It was not just bad luck. It was genetic. That made everything even worse. Now they had to worry about Charlotte too. Pierce became an advocate for early testing and awareness. It was too late for Cassandra, but he wanted to help others. In December 1991, her time ran out. One night as they lay in bed, Pierce full of grief, Cassandra whispered, "Please darling, do not worry, it is just a life winding down." She was still the strong one even at the end. She did not want machines or hospitals. She wanted dignity. She faced death on her terms. She died on December 28, 1991. She was only 43. Pierce and her son Christopher were with her. Charlotte, who was away in London studying acting, was on the phone. Christmas had just passed. While others were celebrating, Pierce was planning a funeral. And then came the hardest part, telling 8-year-old Sean that his mother was gone. Pierce suddenly had to raise 3 kids alone. Sean was 8, Christopher was 19, and Charlotte was 20. He said it was the first time he had felt real grief. It overwhelmed him, but he kept going. He said Cassandra made him who he was. "She is forever in every fiber of my being," he later said. Pierce Brosnan was finally cast as James Bond in 1994. What made it even more personal was his wife Cassandra Harris. She had been a Bond girl herself in For Your Eyes Only back in 1981. She had cancer by then and she pushed him to go for the role again. She wanted to see him become 007 before she passed. So when he finally got it, it was not just a victory. It was heartbreak and triumph all rolled into one. His debut in GoldenEye was a make-or-break moment. Not just for him but for the whole Bond franchise. The film had already burned through directors and its budget had jumped to $60 million. MGM was nearly bankrupt. If it failed, Bond would have ended right there. But GoldenEye made $353 million worldwide. That tank chase scene through St. Petersburg alone cost $8 million. Brosnan did 90% of his own stunts, including a terrifying bungee jump off a 220-meter dam in Switzerland. It was so dangerous, insurance companies refused to cover it. The film was released exactly 30 years after Sean Connery's final official Bond film Diamonds Are Forever. It was not just another movie, it was a resurrection. And it worked. Nintendo even created the GoldenEye 007 video game because of it. That game changed the industry and introduced Bond to a whole new generation. The success did not stop there. Brosnan's next 3 Bond films made a combined $1.238 billion. But those wins came with personal loss. When Tomorrow Never Dies hit in 1997, he was still grieving Cassandra's death from 6 years earlier. He poured that pain into the character. One chase scene in Saigon cost $12 million to film. They had to build an entire Vietnamese street in England just for it. The World Is Not Enough in 1999 had Bond's longest opening sequence at 14 minutes. It also had Bond's first female main villain. They even did a real oil pipeline explosion using 120 gallons of gasoline, creating a fireball visible from 10 miles away. Then came Die Another Day in 2002. It celebrated Bond's 40th anniversary and nearly killed Brosnan. A parasurfing stunt went wrong and he got pulled underwater by 30-foot waves. He ended up in the hospital with hypothermia. That same movie featured a $300,000 invisible Aston Martin and a massive ice palace set in Iceland made with 1,000 tons of ice. But Brosnan was not just box office gold. He won the Saturn Award for Best Actor in 1996. What made it wild was that he beat Sean Connery, who was nominated the same year for The Rock. It was the first time a current Bond outshined a former one. Even Steven Spielberg called Brosnan after GoldenEye to offer him the role of Indiana Jones. Brosnan turned it down to stay loyal to Bond. That decision likely cost him $50 million, but it showed how committed he was to the role. Everything seemed perfect. Then came 2004. He was in the Bahamas filming After the Sunset. Life was good. He had done 4 Bond films that earned $1.4 billion. He was in great shape, training, pitching ideas for Bond 21. Then at 2:47 p.m., his phone rang. The producers cut him loose. No warning, no explanation. The call lasted 47 seconds. "You were a great James Bond. Thank you very much. Goodbye." That was it. What made it colder was how well his films had performed. Die Another Day had made $431.9 million, the most ever for a Bond movie at the time. But producers had already decided they wanted a younger Bond. They waited until he was alone and vulnerable to deliver the blow. In just 3 days everything changed. 3 movie deals disappeared. Studios backed out. Internal emails later showed he was seen as too Bond and hard to cast in anything else. His asking price dropped from $12 million to $3 million. He had to let go of 12 staff members. He went into a deep depression. His kids saw him cry when the Casino Royale trailer came out. That moment hit him hard. His role had been handed off without even a goodbye. Turns out the producers had been screen testing other actors for 2 years while pretending they still believed in him. That betrayal stung more than the firing itself. But there was something else happening back in 1994, just a few months before he officially became Bond. Something unexpected happened. On April 8, 7:30 p.m., at a beach party in Cabo San Lucas, he met Keely Shaye Smith. She was a journalist and they clicked right away. She was not impressed by the fame. She liked who he was, not what he did. They talked until 2 a.m. He flew her to meet his kids within 3 weeks. She moved in 6 months later. Their connection was real. And years later, that relationship became the one thing he could count on when everything else fell apart. In 2001, they got married in Ireland. The ceremony cost $2.3 million. It was held at Ballintubber Abbey, a church that had been running for almost 800 years. The guest list was tight, just 100 people, including Judi Dench and Liam Neeson. Brosnan wore a traditional Irish kilt. He cried when he saw Keely walk down the aisle. Charlotte Brosnan was only 41 when she died in 2013. But her death was not just a tragedy. It was the 3rd time this exact nightmare played out in the same family. Her grandmother had died of ovarian cancer. So had her mother, Cassandra Harris, at just 43. And now Charlotte. She was 2 years younger than her mother when the disease took her life. Charlotte had fought hard. For 3 years she battled the cancer that quietly grew inside her. Ovarian cancer is called the silent killer for a reason. By the time it is found, it is often too late. In fact, 75% of women are only diagnosed in the late stages, where the chances of survival drop from 90% to as low as 20 to 30%. Charlotte was born in 1971. She lost her biological father Dermot Harris and was adopted by Pierce Brosnan in 1986. He gave her his name, his love, and a place in his heart. But no amount of love could stop the genetic curse that had already stolen 2 generations. For Pierce, it wasn't just about losing his daughter. It was about watching history repeat itself in the worst way possible. Back in 1991, he lost his wife Cassandra to the same disease. She went through 8 surgeries and 18 months of chemo. He called it life-changing, watching someone you love fade away like that piece by piece. It rewires your entire world. He said, "You're dealing with death. Everything changes." Then, 22 years later, the same thing happened to Charlotte. At the 2014 Stand Up to Cancer fundraiser, Pierce stood on stage and poured his heart out. He said, "I held the generous, strong, beautiful hand of my first wife Cassie as ovarian cancer took her life much too soon. And just last year I held the hand of my funny, wonderful daughter Charlotte before she too died from this wretched inherited disease." It wasn't just fresh grief. It was trauma all over again, deep, dark, and familiar. One of Pierce's closest friends, Bron Royance, said it best. Charlotte's illness came with a darkness. Pierce was reliving the whole nightmare. He had found love again. He had married Keely Shaye Smith in 2001 and started a new family with 2 sons, Dylan and Paris. But when Charlotte got sick, it all came back, every memory, every helpless moment. He was beyond devastated, Royance said. But even in the middle of all that pain, Keely stood by him, holding him together. And then came the cruelest twist. Charlotte got married. On June 14, 2013, she said "I do" to Alex Smith, her longtime partner. 2 weeks later, she was gone. June 28, 2013, that Friday afternoon at exactly 2:00 p.m., she passed away in London. She was surrounded by Alex, her 2 children, 15-year-old Isabella and 8-year-old Lucas, and her brothers Christopher and Shaw. She had been born in London. She studied acting there, and that's where her life ended. Pierce released a short statement after she died. Charlotte fought her cancer with grace and humanity, courage and dignity. Her strength was astonishing. Even in her final weeks, she arranged her wedding. She wanted her children to see that love still mattered. Her daughter Isabella was 15 when she lost her mother, just like Charlotte had been when Cassandra was diagnosed. Lucas was 8, the same age Pierce's son Sean had been when his mother died. The echo of history was almost too precise, too cruel. Friends said Charlotte was the kind of mother who put everything into her kids. Her friend Claire Beckwith remembered her saying she didn't care about acting anymore. "This is my family," she said. "I want to give them all the love I can." And just like that, Alex Smith went from newlywed to widower in 2 weeks. Now he had to raise 2 children who had just watched their mother disappear. Pierce, now a grandfather, stepped in, grieving all over again but also trying to be strong for the ones left behind. But not all of Charlotte's siblings found a way to cope. Christopher Broen fell hard. After Cassandra's death in 1991, he was only 19. He had promise. He worked on Pierce's Bond films like Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough. But the pain caught up with him. By 1996, he was fined £1,000 for drunk driving. A year later, he went to jail for 3 months for doing it again. Then came drugs, GHB, heroin. He collapsed outside a London club and slipped into a coma. In 2012, at age 32, he was arrested again, this time for heroin possession. He had become part of the Brixton drug scene. A long way from Hollywood, a long way from who he used to be. In June 2024, Christopher made his first public appearance in 20 years. Paparazzi spotted him outside a grocery store in London, gaunt, alone, 51 years old. Meanwhile, Keely Shaye Smith had been fighting her own battle. For years, the tabloids mocked her weight. They showed before and after pictures comparing her young body with how she looked after motherhood. Trolls flooded the internet. Pierce wasn't having it. He defended her in a now famous post. "I love every curve of her body. She is the most beautiful woman in my eyes. And also because she had our 5 children." Keely, now 61, dropped 100 pounds in 2024. No surgery, no shortcuts, just walking, swimming, whole foods, and patience. Most of all, self-respect and gratitude, she wrote online. "For all my body has given and accomplished in 60 years. In August 2024, she and Pierce celebrated 23 years of marriage, 31 years since they met. Through tragedy, scandal, and grief, they stayed strong. At their anniversary, Pierce called her his North, South, East, and West. Keely replied, "You are the finest, loveliest, tenderest person I have ever known." They were just seen supporting George Clooney's Broadway debut in April 2025. Keely in a black lace dress, Pierce still charming, still steady. Despite everything, he keeps working. He was cast as Dr. Fate in Black Adam in 2022. The director said Pierce had the perfect mix of power and calm. At 71, he's still one of the coolest men in Hollywood. But more than that, he's a fighter. He's used his pain and turned it into purpose. He's an advocate now. A UNICEF ambassador since 2001, he's marched with Greenpeace, spoken out against nuclear testing, and raised money for cancer awareness. He once boycotted the GoldenEye premiere in France to protest nuclear weapons. When Charlotte was sick, he said he'd do anything, call anyone, go anywhere, beg if he had to. He just wanted her to live. He couldn't save her, but he's still trying to save others.